Obviously, good weather and tropical in Sweden too.
It is. It is. It's like 24 degrees and sunny and all that.
Yeah.
But you're in the basement.
No, not really. No, it's just a dark room. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, dark room. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, are you living in Cologne? Is it?
Yeah. I'm Cologne right now. Yeah. Or actually, right now it's good. For more than a year now.
Just briefly, like how's the last couple of 1.5 years been for you?
Oh, I can't complain really.
No, it's been okay.
And the days are just packed somehow. No, I was like, other people are learning all kinds of new stuff and doing new and I try too, but the days are over so quickly. Hi, good to see you. Hi. Alles gut?
Ja, bei dir?
Ja, auch. Warst du in Salt Lake gerade?
Ja, genau.
I think we should rewind back to the beginning, how it all started for you. And then we'll probably end up where you are right now. That's
okay.
Yeah.
Like as a climber, or
actually both as a climber and how you got interested in training and movement and everything as well. But I guess climbing came first, or did it?
Well, let me. You just. I'm not the shortest. The briefest storytellers. I've just recently reflected on this because I was a little bit in conversation with Kyra Conti, and she had really severe scoliosis.
Yep.
And I had too. I don't think to the extent Kyra has, but I spent the first 3 months as a baby in a cast. My whole spine was in the cast. And afterwards, I always had to go to the physio, afterwards to cure it. And I think because actually I don't remember the cast, of course, but I think to do physiotherapy from really early on, and I think that really had an influence. That somehow, so as long as I remember, I was really interested in training, and my first activity that I picked up was track. And so basically since then I've been, I feel like a performance athlete since then, almost. Yeah. And when I was doing track, I was doing, I have really short forearms, so I'm a terrible thrower. But I'm okay with jumping and running, and I from early on really interested in training science. Like I could tell you, like Pavo Nurmi, the first guy who ran long distances, endurance training, and then Zatopek,
Emil, yeah,
the interval method. I could basically tell you everything about it by the age of 12. Or so, it's somehow a bizarre interest for a boy in this age, and I didn't really remember this since just a short while ago. That was already some foundation.
That's how it started.
Yeah. And then I switched to whitewater racing, but because it was more, I was a quite rebellious kid, and track was so formal. And when I was 13, I switched to this whitewater kayaking, and this was really a good school of life because it's right in downtown Cologne, and they have they store their kayaks in the bridge. So it's really scenic, it's really cool. But I was a kind of a sheltered child before then, like I didn't speak the Cologne dialect, for example, and this was quite a different scene. And also the coaching and the whole structure of the club was really top down, like really authoritarian. I mean, what's interesting to compare is if you look at the demographics, I'm born in '63, and most people in the, at least in the first world, were born, I think, '64. This is where the most babies were born.
Okay.
So this is quite different compared to nowadays, because in the club, it was, if you didn't want to compete, there were immediately 10 other guys willing to jump in. Basically, I know and to this day, I'm really schizophrenic if it comes to performance. If you trigger me, then I'm afraid I'm the worst, like the most competitive person you can imagine. But if I'm not triggered, want to believe or think of myself as being really mellow. I think that comes from this time, because it's even after I stopped competing, I occasionally went kayaking there, and when these certain rivals came in, I gave 200%. When I was just to give it a 50%, like just a mellow session, and then my personal rival arrived, and I went berserk. And I still have to. You trigger me, and it's still up to this day. I don't know really what triggers it. And sometimes I'm really embarrassed of myself, But if I sense something as a competitive situation, and it appeals to me, then I'm still triggered.
That's a pretty good trait if you can channel it. Like if you're in competition to get that feeling to really go for it, you can control it.
I don't. This must be subconsciously, because the way sometimes, like for example, I'm a militarist bicycle rider. So if you cut me off with a car, I get aggressive really quickly, and to the point where it's a little bit embarrassing, and I'm ashamed of myself, and it's almost like as if a different person. This is why I call it schizophrenic. Like it's I'm a different person then.
Do you have any specific stories to share about that? Something that's happened?
About the bicycles? Just recently, but again, I'm not so proud of it. Like, I go totally over the top. It is really like a trigger, and then I go off.
Dr. Jekyll and Hyde, like.
Yeah, a little bit, and even like with the coaching nowadays, it's still the same. It's still the same. Like I have this, I really, and I think I'm not like, if I'm watching these competitions, even if I was involved, I think whoever climbs the best has deserved to win, and I don't harbor any negative feeling against this person. But then if I'm with an athlete or with athletes and the same mistakes keep on happening, I get really frustrated, much more than I want to be. I'm more competitive than I might come across sometimes. And so to go on,
it surprised me, because exactly, I don't, like, you don't give me that feeling you are so competitive, like, as I know you.
Yeah, but it's really, it's really a matter of if there's certain triggers, and also like if you tell me, and even like watching these recent competitions now on the stream, and I see athletes that invest so much, but I see that they're basically not learning, and nothing is really there's nothing that really frustrates me, because I almost want to smack and say, like, come on, and how can you believe that you can solve this this problem if you never really worked on this? This again, and I'm not especially proud of this, but there is this side of me, unfortunately, but whatever, it's just part of me. And then going back to your question, because the reason that led me to leave track was 6 years later the same reason to make me leave kayaking, competitive whitewater racing, because I have been climbing a little bit. I started in Scotland was the first time actually I climbed on rock, and there I bought a mountain magazine with the article. I bought it for a kayak expedition that was also in the magazine, but there was the article "States of the Art" by Max Jones and Mark Uden. And if you remember, they were climbing with swarmy belts and like no harnesses yet. And so I don't know if you, in Sweden, you have the same thing where you close the windows with I don't know how these roll up.
Yeah.
And the webbing, that's resembles a swarmy belt, the tubular webbing a little bit, except it's much more painful if you fall into it. And so a friend of mine from kayaking, we started climbing. But then, and if you basically, if all this had stopped by the age of 19, I would nowadays not talk of myself as a schizophrenic person, but just as a total performance Nazi.
Right.
I was a terrible person by the age of 19. It was basically you tell me how fast you run the 10K, and I tell you if you're a good person, if you're a good human being, you know, like really like this. And
Nice,
everything
nice.
was, yeah, no, not nice. And and then I started to study sports in Cologne, and I started really narrow-mindedly, but at one point was always playing chess with some friends, male friends, and we were talking about where the most girls would be and which classes had the most girls, you know, and we decided to do something called movement theater at the beginning, but later turned out to be a real obsession with performing arts. And this changed everything, because, and so I learned about body language and all these things. So I was still, like, for my climbing, I still had this, all the theoretical classes was like sports medicine, physiology, anatomy. And so that was all as it would have been just a couple of years ago. But then I was also spending a lot of time on stage. So at one point I was either climbing or bouldering or being on stage and performing. And this led to an engagement with a youth circus. And that was another big influence. That was in the 90s, and I did this for 6 years, I think. And I can juggle a bit, I can tightrope walking, and so a little bit of acrobatics. But these kids, like, I had one girl who could juggle 5 clubs on the unicycle, the high one. In German, it's a giraffe. And she would fall over and keep these 5 clubs, and she could play the violin, really good violin player on the giraffe and playing just in front of you, you know, with a wheel just behind. And so basically I was coaching something I didn't understand. And that was excellent preparation for the German boulderers 10 years later, more than 10 years later.
So this was this was the 90s, you said, but at the same time, like early 90s, you wrote the performance rock climbing, right?
Yeah, that was based on my master's thesis.
Okay.
I think like some of the first was about like key performance indicators for competition climbing, as it was then, of course. And there was so much like the whole with the capillarization. So I was really lucky with the professor didn't want to take it because he said, this is just a fad. No, this will climbing. Who cares? You know, in half a year this will be over. It's just like inline skating
or internet.
Yeah, or internet. Exactly. Exactly. And I really had to convince him. I was already photographing quite a bit and had one of these early video SVHS, you know, because in the former times with analog tapes, you were losing 30% of quality every time you copied the tape. Okay. But with SVHS, that gave you like 30% more, so you could do one copy more to have like somehow you will. And I gave him a presentation, and so he accepted that I do this master's thesis, and I ended up spending endless. I counted like all the competitions. I already recorded all the competitions, and then I counted holding times, how long they would shake out, and all this. And this is all what performance rock climbing is based on.
And in hindsight, that must have been really, really important for you in your life, right?
Yeah. I mean, the book came out in '93, and we quickly realized that, like many first-time authors, the publisher pretty much screwed us. Not pretty much, actually, totally. So I visited them in '94. And they, me and my then girlfriend, we slept in the car before that, so we were not looking the prettiest. And the lady at the reception was like, okay, what do you want? And like really arrogant. And I said, I'm one of your authors. And she, which book? I said, Performance Rock Climbing. Oh my gosh, we make so much money with a book. But actually what we, especially me as not a native speaker, in the contract, we overlooked the term discounted. And discounted in their understanding is like any time they have to give a rebate. So any volume sales or so, we only get 1% of the instead of around 10%, what's normal for authors. And so so the book, it was mainly the experience to do this with Dale. No, that was fantastic. That was really cool because during this period it was fantastic. You know, because we immediately got some of the early laptops. We went to Waco, and we spent 3 months just in Waco tanks in '91. You know, where you could do anything in Waco. You know, it was totally wild. There was okay, you had to wait every morning for the rangers and pay your $2 to be allowed to boulder. But from then on, it was totally nobody knew what you were doing in North Mountain or so. You know, and later the next year, Dale wanted to just do it. So we spent 2 months in Smith Rocks. You know, and so, but we still had, it was just very nice because basically we were like, okay, you're getting pumped. That must have to do, let me just write this this paragraph, you know, that would help with your problem being pumped on this road. So it was a really nice process of writing performance rock climbing, but worth more, if you ask me. The experience was more important than the actual product.
I understand that, because I was under the impression that, wow, Udo, I mean, he wrote this book that made like tons of money, and he's like set for life, and he can do whatever he wants to.
No, not performance rock climbing. No. Later, and the only smart thing I did in '91 when we negotiated this contract, that I reserved the rights to do whatever I wanted to do with it in German. And this is how Lizenz zum Klettern. And from from 94 till 95, I wrote Lizenz zum Klettern. And that was really an adventure because I self-published it, and it was basically the first years you could do this at all. I did this with Ventura, our publisher. Like in Switzerland, Andres Lita, he did this Ravage magazine, you know, and he did the layout himself. Okay. And it was really like, there were very few people actually almost in the world, you know, who would self-publish something of their own interest, you know, and where it was so frustrating. Like I installed Windows 3.1 a million times, like all the 40 this, you know, like incredible.
When was this? This was like 90.
Lizenz zum Klettern, the first edition came out in '96, like 96. In winter 95, 96, yeah.
And then after this, you did like the Der 11. Grad. And where you were like one day you were witnessing the process. Yeah. Like the worst timing ever. Like you were.
Yeah, I was a little bit stressed because there was what you couldn't know. You know, was a little laugh drama going on. You know.
Okay, that too.
Yeah, you didn't pick up on this, but I was becoming. Klem is 11 years younger than I am, and at this age, we were still in the age where this matters a little bit, like in terms of what you have experienced in life, and also was clear between the two of us that I would pay for the printing and for the whole production of the book. So I was in the unfortunate position of having to make sure that we're actually working. You know? And I'm not saying that Klem didn't want to work, not at all. You know, but he was straying off. Like if you can, I don't know. Did you ever read the text of the Grad?
Not the text. No, I did not.
You did. No, it's really like, even if you speak German, it's really difficult to understand, especially Klem's articles. You know, they're very much flow of consciousness. You know, they're very much very modern in the 60s. You know, very much beat. So you would write whatever crosses your mind. You know, like and have the flow of consciousness running. You know? And when you were visiting. We were on the point where I tried to, this has to be somehow an article at one point.
Get some structure on it and everything.
Yeah. This is why I was probably little bit stressed. Yeah. Yeah. But again, fantastic experience to do this with Klem. Yeah.
Do you have any contact with Klem today?
No. I think most people don't. No. He's just a very peculiar character. You know, like I don't think that he wants to. You know, I think he has his life is as he wants it to have. He's most likely, I could imagine him to be the fittest 47-year-old on the planet. I wouldn't be surprised, you know. Like the last time I saw him.
No, the last things I heard, he was, climbing AC boulders and 9A plus routes a few years ago.
This Thon project is. I think that doesn't have like one of them. I think doesn't have a repeat, but it's crazy hard, and it's also like really hard moves. It's not something where you get tired, and this is because it's hard. It's just. I don't think that there are many people that can. Maybe people like Nalle or Jakob Schubert, or the guys that did all the guys that did the sit-down to Bügeleisen. I think they're capable of climbing something like this, but definitely not your modern plastic climber. I don't think so.
It's a different thing. That's also takes us actually to another subject. You've been present during all the evolution of competition climbing as well. You've been there, and from the beginning with the analysis you did with performance rock climbing to present day when you're analyzing all the movement and everything. Is there any way you could briefly?
Forget briefly. I knew that you would ask me to be briefly.
Forget briefly. What are the main differences, would you say, between competition climbing back then and now?
Like back in '91, or?
Yeah.
I mean, already
competition climbing started really. I
still have this that I don't really. I'm still wondering if I should publish this one time on Instagram, because I have the '89. Footage from Wolfgang in Munich. What was I think the first major competition on plastic. That was really when many of the climbers like Beat Kammerlander, so they were really good rock climbers, but the kind of that even people were watching them was a huge problem for them. They couldn't perform. When they started their sport, that was a little bit for me when I first did performing arts. I didn't even want to put any makeup, and just when I saw that really under these lights, you don't recognize any features in the face, so you have to do it just to make yourself visible. That I accepted this, but I really struggled with this. I really struggled to perform with other people watching. It was a huge problem, because before with kayaking, you're on some river, that doesn't play a role. And I think the same thing happened for Wolfgang Güllich, for many of the old climbers. It was almost a matter who is the most extrovert and can cope with this kind of attention.
So Jerry Moffatt.
Jerry Moffatt, for example. Yes, that would be I was in Verdun. That was actually really influential in '84 when he did Puppy on Site, and when he announced that he would try Puppy on Site, there was a crowd rapidly. There were people watching, so that already, I think, right, yeah, absolutely, because even then, I think a couple of months later, Wolfgang went to the Verdun and also did it. And before it had been tried by Patrick Etlanger also. And they all did it they all weren't feeling comfortable, because Puppy on Site is really to look into. You can watch it really nicely from the other side. It's really accessible. It's a last pitch. It's a short pitch, so you can see everything. And most people who did it after Jerry, didn't have this kind of audience, so he could deal with this. Yes, yeah. And this was, and the same with Stefan Glowacz. If you look at this, around this time, Stefan Glowacz was the best climber for what was asked back then. And also the most comfortable. He would appear in TV shows. but it's also he's 1 year younger than I am. I think it's also like how he started climbing, you know, and what. I think many of these old climbers, like when they started climbing, was not with the intention to be watched, you know. It wouldn't be a spectator sport. I think that plays a huge role. Like, for example, Fred Nicole, you know, like a fantastic climber, and he even, I think he ended up in the lead World Cup, you know, like what was he, like
sixth
place
or something?
Fifth overall, in the overall World Cup, you know, and it's almost Fred Nicole's 20% in the mid-90s was more than 100% of most other competitors, but he was feeling so uncomfortable, you know. I think he still feels, right? He's not
for sure.
No, he's not the most extrovert, like that kind of thing.
No. He doesn't appreciate it. It doesn't play a role in his like. This is not his motivation in climbing. No? But I think nowadays, so I think that plays a huge part in it. If you think about, like, even when, like, for me, the biggest evolution came in '91 in Frankfurt when François Legrand won. And usually became second, and that was really like, even like in terms of being extrovert or so, you know, he was much more comfortable, and he trained much more on plastic. I think François was the first one who realized how that you have to be swift and fluid, you know, and you don't waste and you don't expect like huge rests. The first one who took like modern competition climbing seriously.
I think that's the biggest difference, you know, between the old and new generation. The old generation, they are like rock climbers coming like inside, and the new generation, they are like people, they are climbing just on plastic mostly.
But also in relation to that, like, when do you think competition climbing stopped trying to imitate rock climbing?
I don't know. I must really say, and I know that might come across a little controversial, but these people that always make this statement, you know, I have to ask, what are they actually talking about? When they talk about climbing, I think they're talking about the steep limestone climbing in the that came up in the late or in the 80s, 90s, and it's still, of course, valid and very attractive today. But yes. This is a certain type, and you only occasionally, in lead more than in bouldering, but you only occasionally see this. But all the other, like if you would put the changing corners into a boulder World Cup, it would be a fantastic problem, and it would be hard enough.
That's true.
And the roof. The roof, I mean, this is a nightmare if you're tall and you have to stand on your feet. And now, just recently, or not recently, since a couple of years, it's really clear that some of the competition climbers are easy, boulderers are easy to take out if you ask them to stand very precisely on very small things. Have to do in the roof, you know, for traversing the roof on El Cap, and that's still, like, even now last weekend in Salt Lake, they had these old school. They were asking, they were challenging these old school qualities. You know, but I'm so I think everything we see in modern bouldering competition, and I know that many people don't agree, you find in climbing. If you look at broad climbing, and even if you look, maybe I do this one time, I will put a video together where I show Gibbons basically inventing all these modern boulder moves. Like this, for example, I have fantastic footage of Gibbons doing World Cup boulder problems. Of course, a lot better than we do. So I don't. What I want to say, I don't really see this disconnect so much.
I wouldn't say so much as a disconnect either, but I think I sometimes think that it's actually the other way around. That we now learn movements and stuff from the competitions that we actually can apply outdoors. We wouldn't see this boulder problem outdoors unless we had the competitions to thank for it, in a way. Like, let's say coordination movements. There are a lot outdoors that haven't been done yet because we haven't seen it.
Yeah, but if in 2016 I had the pleasure to climb with Johnny Dawes, who was like one of my earliest, like especially this Bukes 8C, where he jumps on the carousel in Abt, on the playground. And like this actually was really nice for us in Cologne. Cologne is not a good place for climbers at all, but it's rather close to Fontainebleau. So and they're always like in Bac-Cuvier, aerodynamique is l'aerodynamique. That was like one of the harder problem. And you park the car in Bac-Cuvier and it sits right there. So basically, and it was the first time I was in Fontainebleau in '82. And so basically I just started climbing. We went to Fontainebleau. I see Jackie in l'aerodynamique. So, okay. And now we have 40 years later, actually, almost. And we have 40 years later. And this could be another boulder problem, where precision in the pocket, to a target is asked. Yeah. So again, I don't, and even if you read some stuff that Wolfgang wrote, and this is really like ugly Frankenjura climbing, painful and everything, but how important he considered the skill of hitting pockets,
target.
And I don't. You must remember Werner Thon in the Frankenjura, and now we're talking the Frankenjura. This is the most contact strength depending area in the world. Polish limestone is even worse. Or in Switzerland, they have some really nasty limestone too. But Werner was strong, but he was mainly really good he was flying through the air like a noodle, but then he would in the air could hit any pocket. So, and this is a quality that comes really handy for any modern competitor.
Yeah.
So again, sure. You know what I mean? And if you look at some of the obscure Johnny Dawes problems, like this one thing where you run up through a gully, you jump from boulder to boulder, and then I forgot the name. It has I think like a car racer or a motorcycle racer. The name is a really cool name. I forgot the name though. And this is so outrageous. If you would try this nowadays in the Boulder World Cup, people would say, no, that is too crazy. Would be basically that it would be considered a really crazy skating move / dyno.
Yeah, so everything has been there. There's the skills that's needed
maybe I'm exaggerating. Maybe I'm trying to make a point, but it's also like crossing maps. This is for there are really nice visualizations of. The closest in terms of movement from all the apes are really the gibbons. And what they do a lot of bipedal walking. They stand on one branch and they hold the branch above. And this allows them to be really safe, but also they can lower on the branch they were just standing on. And this, of course, increases the food they can pick and forage by a whole lot, So basically, and if you look at this, it's almost like if you would do a mobility check on a climber, and like somebody like Adam is one aspect is that Adam can touch and control the biggest range of any climber. He's tall, he has nice long arms, but he's also super mobile. Basically, his workspace is the richest. He can make use of anything that's on the wall. And this is just the same that any ape or any animal for that, any arboreal animal is more performant if they have more means of picking fruits and seeds.
And it's the 4 points. It's not the 2 points like reaching. It's like being able to use your feet in the same manner, more or less, which makes that creates the advantage, really.
Yeah, it's just about like in climbing. I mean, it's also like with my athletes. Also, the better climber has more options. Yeah. It's all about options.
Yeah.
You know, and so for the apes, for any animal, but also for the competition climber.
Right. So there we have it. It's really short analysis of Adam. Really, I mean, his advantages. But what makes Janja so special?
Several things. Like there's one aspect I think that's so far a little bit overlooked, and this is like crossing midline. You know, that's our left hemisphere of the brain controls the right side of the body, and vice versa. And that sounds really trivial, but humans are easily confused, you know. So basically what this means, you know, what I was just saying, this is my right hand, I cross over to my left side.
Yeah.
Once I cross over, my brain wonders which side of the brain is responsible for my hand now. So even I don't have balls right now, but if you can juggle, I challenge you to juggle over cross. And you will see that is really, really hard to do. Yeah, even if you're okay with 3 balls, like you're a basic juggler, but try to put a ball in each hand and throw them like this. So that would, like if you would do it like this, it's really easy. If you can juggle with 3 balls, if you do it like this with 2 balls, it becomes super hard. Okay. And now going back to Janja, and the funny thing, if you look up crossing midline or the dominance of one side, most Google search results lead you to dyslexia. And because hand dominance is very important for writing skills.
Okay.
So this is just for evolution-wise, it's a really fascinating thing, because something that must have been an advantage in former times, like using both hands and both feet for this matter equally well, has become a disadvantage in the world where we have to write, you know, because like kids that struggle with establishing side dominance are in trouble. You know, they struggle with the dyslexia very often. You know, I haven't asked Janja yet if she struggles with dyslexia, but one girl who was really twisty and turning, like totally unfazed. Like even if she would get up from the mat, she would do a nice spiral, you know, like an elegant spiral, and basically every move of her. And so she was as Janja, like in this particular skill, she's as competent as Janja. She's totally unfazed. Yeah, you like just this video that Janja posted recently, you know, like of this mistake or whatever in Salt Lake, you know, but wasn't actually the right video. But if you have like a cycling here and you cross over to this cycling, yeah, you can make it really hard on yourself if you try to stay parallel to the wall. You know, the move will be really hard. But this is a sign that you struggle with this midline, crossing the midline. Yeah. You know, whereas Janja, there is no inhibition like this. She really, like, if she realizes that it's good to twist, she twists. Yeah. And you don't see, like, even if you go frame by frame, you don't see this hesitation. And you see this hesitation or this being uncomfortable, you know, or getting into track. Or we all know this, you know, you have a red point project and you, like for the last move, it's important that you step through with your foot. And which again is crossing midline. So it's hard on your brain. So you arrive there tired. And it happens so often to me, you know, at the moment you arrive there, you say, screw it, you know, I try with my left foot and don't step through, because it's for the brain, it's easier to do. And then you fall. Yeah. And you're frustrated.
Yeah, the classic one, like, I know what to do, I know what's easiest, but I'm tired, so I'm going to try something harder.
Yeah, but and especially, and this is also, I think, like many climbing coaches don't consider this. Nowadays I wouldn't consider this even a mistake, but it's just for our brain is fried at this point. You know, we have there's decision fatigue. You know, we are tired, and it's the easier. It's a choice. It's just the easier choice. You know, and for Janja, she doesn't make this. For her, it's not the easier choice. For her, it's like, okay, I have to step through. That feels as easy for my brain as.
But did she learn it, or she was born with it?
No, you have different. I think in general that this is my hypothesis, but from what I know from our youth coaches, the Slovenians enjoy better sports education or better PE lessons in school. I'm sure about this. Like when our youth coaches joined training camp with the Slovenians, you know, they were running around the lake, and the Slovenians were already after 3 rounds. You know, the Germans were starting the 2nd round. You know, so and then they. Okay, let's forget about running. Let's play beach volleyball, you know. But it was so boring for the Slovenians to play with the Germans, you know. So that's they didn't find anything where they were on equal ground, you know, because the Slovenians were superior in everything. And I think, like if you look at all the Balkan states, they're really strong in all the ball activities, all the games. And I think that certainly helped, you know. Like I think if you would put Janja. I think you could use Janja in a basketball game much better than many of her competitors. You know, so I think in general she has a really good sports
in general.
Yeah. And also, what many this is the downfall. I think for many athletes, if you specialize in early ages to climbing, you know, you're missing all the catching activities, you know, all the activities where you have to improvise, and you become a very rigid person. And again, this is exactly what Janja isn't.
Yeah.
But this is a skill that is not like, if you look at even the stupid 100 meters, just about on artificial ground, flat ground, and that is still discovering more things. They always learn more things about why Usain Bolt was so fast.
Yeah.
And one of the key elements is relaxation. Like nobody is getting any faster. After 60 meters, they're all getting slower. Just the rate in which they're getting slower depends on their relaxation.
Yeah.
You know, there was Usain Bolt had this rival, Asafa Powell, who got all, you know, who had all tense, and he never had a chance. And the more nervous he got, the tense. And again, I think that this is all what Janja would be the Usain Bolt of climbing. You know?
Yeah, I know with Asafa, I mean, the bigger the competition, the worse he ran. Yeah,
exactly. All his world records were in
all comps. Like,
I mean, it was a fantastic. I think he broke the world record 4 or 5 times. Huh? So
it wasn't bad.
No, not at all. But I think so. This is Janja, especially this crossing midline, and also I think I have some videos of Janja, and she dinos for hold, and she looks like your regular athletic girls. There's nothing special. But once she hits the hold, she becomes the Hulk for a couple of frames, like for not even a tenth of a second. You know? And I think that's not really. And like if you come from a strength and conditioning background, you know, you would call this rate of force development. But there is a new neurocognitive side to her, because I think same with Tomoa, they just anticipate what they have to do better than many other climbers.
Yes, so relaxation also means, I mean, there's also confidence. They're confident as well, which also helps with the relaxation.
Yeah,
isn't that right?
Absolutely. Yeah. This is a big subject. Now we can talk the next 20 years about this. No, absolutely. It's yes. But in Janja's case, certainly, I wonder. Now it's almost like a chicken egg.
Exactly.
Thing. What comes first?
The funny thing is, like the Adams, he has completely different style than Tomoa. You know, like it's completely like he's, you know, the Tomoa, he's like really the moving like so naturally, you know, and so Adam, he's completely different, but he's still like one of the strongest climbers.
No, he is the best. I mean, I have
Yeah.
no question. If you ask me, I have not like between Dawn Wall and plastic world championships. No, there's nobody who could do this. No. And also Adam is used. There's actually I just talked about early specialization, and you could consider. And there are a couple of like Tiger Woods, for example, early specialization, very successful. But then there's Roger Federer. Who was considered not to be a talent in tennis, in young ages,
Yeah.
and
it worked out.
it worked out okay. Yeah. And so, but if you look at Adam, there's several videos, especially when he was young. Like he is in a little activity in some village in the Czech Republic, and he's climbing on these rolling logs, and I think Adam's strength comes from fantastic problem-solving capability. The guy is just really smart.
Yeah.
If you have to escape from somewhere or you have to solve any problem, and like when
Adam.
as kids, you when you were picking your football team, and you would, and the strongest kids, and I would be the last one to pick, So if you had the choice, and it's something where you need some brain power, and you would pick Adam.
Yeah, that's exactly that, because I think when I watch Adam and Tomoa, for example, so Adam, he can analyze the problem and realize what he needs to do, and Tomoa just feels like what he tries something and he feels what's right. It's just intuitive in a different way, I'd say. To some degree.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. Like there was like in Salt Lake last weekend, the first problem that had Tomoa written all over it, but then he couldn't do it.
Yeah.
It was not the first time. And I think what Tomoa is missing is, I mean, Adam has plenty of this. He's really good in self-organization. Like he knows what he's doing. And this comes, I mean, I know Adam. I saw him the first time when he was 10 years old. And he already was, of course, the strongest climber around. But back then, he was still a young boy, And when his mom felt that he was hungry, she peeled a banana and put it in Adam's mouth. So, like just your regular 10-year-old boy.
Yeah.
But the way he worked on boulder problems, he already, like from very early on, he has full ownership of what he's doing. And this is probably like, if it comes to character traits, that is really, really important, and Adam, but Adam, many other climbers, Jakob Schubert, Shaun McColl, they all have tremendous ownership about what they're doing. And then you have like even somebody like Janja, if you think about it, fantastic, of course, but Janja was always coached, and of course that that speeds up the learning if it goes well, but it also takes away a little bit of how much you own your actions. So and this is actually super important, maybe the most important aspect, especially if it comes to improving over the years. We see some athletes that totally stall in their development, and you have others who always, like Adam doesn't particularly enjoy to do these modern boulder moves at all. But on the other hand, I think he's challenged. But I think you can present any challenge to Adam, and he will be startled. It's just in his nature. And if it's modern bouldering, he learns this too.
And that's the thing with Janja. I think that it would be way more interesting both for Janja herself and for us watching, like if she were challenged now and then. Usually she's not challenged at all. It's just
I think we see. I think the French team will be really strong this year, like Oriane. But it's actually quite interesting to compare 16-year-old Oriane with 16-year-old Janja. And 16 years old are 16 years old. So Janja was making the same mistake. She could have won already World Cups with 16 years old, but she always found a way to mess it up, And I think that just making a lot more mistakes in this age. And I think we will surely, like Mao Nakamura, you know, she did like the Salt Lakes comps didn't go too well for her, but there actually I think maybe overall the strongest of them all is Mori.
Yeah.
I think Mori can even, or actually especially if it's really, really hard.
Yeah.
Mori can already challenge. It's just a matter of her dealing with it mentally. You know, that's a big part of it too. But just like that was a little underwhelming in Salt Lake. Now the problems were. But the wall doesn't allow for very interesting. I mean, the wall is right from the 90s a little bit.
Yeah.
But it's good that they did this competition. I'm not. But for the future.
Yeah. So I think I also have hope for the future in that sense that I think there are quite a few climbers coming up now that can actually start challenging Janja. And if I were Janja right now, I would be like getting bored. I mean, she didn't win at Salt Lake, but that was a matter of not making the mistakes, and it's not interesting in that sense.
No. No, I think like first of all she has the Olympic Games, you know, but I think that was like from Akiyo's point of view, I think that was not smart to go to Salt Lake, you know, and see firsthand how much Janja had improved in speed. But because now I think there's no way for anybody to beat Janja. No, if she stays healthy. So like talking of Janja, and then I saw this discussion on social media, and I think weren't you planning this for your event, Björn? At one point, I think there should be events with girls competing against or with boys.
Yes.
You know, and I think the way to make it work is that you let the athletes set, so that basically Janja could set something that would get the boys into trouble. You know, and I know, for example, Katja Wittmer, you know, the 360 and simple, and she is so precise. She knows what the boys will struggle with. She was setting one time Studio Block, and she was like, I knew this, you know, and she could do this easily, you know, just from how well you fit into the box.
But that was sort of the problem. Like when we had plans for making such a competition, but we didn't want to make a competition where you have, say, 4 problems and 2 are distinctly like girls' problems and 2 are guys' problems, and they can't do each other's. You know, it has to be something that is hard for everyone, like, but in different ways.
But I think, I don't know how you finally went about it, but the way
we never did it.
In Cologne, this invitational, we had no other setters involved. So just the athletes got some time. They all had identical holes. And they drew part of the wall. They had to put their roots in. And from there on, it was just whatever they wanted to do. And the important part is you couldn't win if you hadn't climbed your own problem. Right. You know, so that was basically the no-no. You had to climb to keep a lid on, you know, how outrageous, you know. And I think under these circumstances, that would be fascinating because Jan Hojer tells me he really likes to warm up in isolation with Janja, and it's 50-50. And this is what Jan tells me. You know, it's like 50% Janja is doing better than him, and 50% is Jan doing better at Janja. So they could compete on equal ground any day, and it would be totally open who would win. So we should do it.
In Salt Lake, there was mixed gender competition.
Yeah.
Janja wasn't part of it because she wasn't there.
I saw just a post by Fanny, and she somehow implied that this problem hasn't been done by some boys.
Yeah, exactly. So it was cool to see it. Like the girls could climb something which boys couldn't. So. Yeah.
I don't think like one easy thing where many boys are having problems with just the hip control. With many still okay competitors is in fact terrible, you know. And I don't see I don't see really somebody like Fanny struggling with like this top. these tops, you know, where you imagine you have to find a stable position. I think the girls would laugh about what the girl. I mean, but it's also in many, like in general, the hip control and how smart they use the hip, and how they initiate the movement is very often a bit better with the girls.
So what do you think we can expect from the future?
Like in general.
Well, not in general, in relation to climbing, I guess.
Yeah, I think the theory of everything. More complexity, faster, more time constraints, and so far I think everybody is doing a lot of mistakes. I think the not competing last year really shows. I don't know if you would agree. Like, you've seen a lot of competition firsthand.
I don't know. Yeah, could be. Yeah.
Like Miho number 3 in the first finals, you know, that I can't remember something like this, you know, and trying and trying again. So I think what we see right now is people winning with just very solid performances now, and of course fantastic climbers and everything. But I think it will take a while till we see like really like true Tomoa, true Janja performances, you know, and these will be amazing, you know. And then I would expect like somebody like Oriane, just by the sheer fact that she's young and she's more neuroplastic, you know, that she still can learn more. She's basically standing on Janja's shoulders. You know? And I watched this firsthand, how much she is. Like, I think she knows Janja better than Janja knows herself. You know? As probably Janja knew Mina Markovic better than Mina knew herself.
But what do you think? Like, it looks like right now the I wouldn't say old, but slightly older stars are a little bit behind. Do you think this is just because? I mean, like we saw Shaun has been injured, and we saw Akiyo and Shaun and like everyone. Is it just because they're going for the Olympics now they're behind, you think, or is it actually that they're overrun?
Yeah, I think that's okay. There are many. I mean, first of all, like social media is really messing with everybody. I think. If like it must be like for Shauna, you know, of course everybody presents him or herself on social media, but it puts an additional strain on your well-being for sure. You know, you know what's going on, but you have to portray yourself as this optimistic and positive person. So that must be that puts some strain, and that shows somewhere, you know, like hopefully not like in your performance, but I think in many cases it does. And also like even Akiyo making this decision to go just for one World Cup to Salt Lake, you know, and I think that was most likely because of sponsors or because of something she probably didn't have the full control over. No, and I know that many injuries were prolonged because they had to show up at a certain event to please their sponsors.
Right.
Now, so that more and more creeps. And if you do this for a couple of years, of course, you know this one injury took longer than necessary. You know, so the next time you have another little injury, but you still ask, okay, please come to our event. But also people forget, like with Akiyo, there were many more seasons in her career that started a little bit not so fantastic before, you know, and people always glorify, you know, like Akiyo, but the way they are thinking, including me, they're thinking of all the highlights, you know, but you look in previous year and you see, wow, she looks really unhappy, you know, and she doesn't look like a good climber. And also, like the first time Jule won a World Cup was 1 week after the only time in her entire life she didn't make semis. She only, in lead and in bouldering, she only didn't make semis once in Lok Dragomir in 2013, and the next weekend she won Innsbruck.
Wasn't that the case also with Jan Hojer? The first time he won, he was like lost into semis or something.
Yeah, of course. This is almost a prerequisite. We had athletes, if they were feeling well in isolation, that made me really nervous. We had athletes that needed to cry in isolation and having all kinds of pains and like being totally, because I think expectations show me one red point climber who I found this quite heart-wrenching, the Adam series about Perfecto Mundo. It's even Adam is not
a machine.
And with expectations when he's sitting in the car and he talks about the humidity and the wind and today would be perfect, it's expectations is the worst.
I feel like we could talk for probably 4 more hours.
Certainly.
But I think for today, this is all we have time for.
Yeah. Let's do this. Let's do the competition, gender neutral.
I would love to do that.
Yes.
I think right now it's a matter of COVID making gyms have no money and
Sure. But that can really at least, because I think that needs some smart and some innovative thinking to make it really attractive. But then I think it could be a blast. Yeah, just one idea. I mean, the way we did it was basically was just about to tell you. So everybody put up their own problems.
Yeah.
And then there were basically it was Mello Blocco format. So and also with the prize money. So nobody was walking away empty-handed. So you could put up a really easy problem that everybody climbed, but it still would be shared through the tops. I think it makes it really attractive, motivating for now you can. And also even for like one time you had Chris Sharma there, and of course it's not his world anymore, like a plastic competition, But I think like with this format, that could be something, because if you do we also had like one prize was for the most attractive problem, and this is what the competitors decided this, So there was an additional prize we put on the most attractive problem. So even if you feel a little bit underpowered, you can do something incredibly innovative, and everybody climbs it, so you won't make a lot of prize, but you most likely don't care, but you still have some process going. It's enjoyable to watch.
You have to find something that is not only about hard and a lot of money. It has to be something interesting.
And also the whole, and I think that's killing sports in general, this zero-sum mentality. And now that you have one winner, and so the winner takes it all, more or less. I think that's not. I think for the future we have to think much more about participation and being inclusive.
But that's exactly what we did with Legends. Most of the years, everyone got the same.
Yeah.
And I think last year's, I mean, the winner got a bit more, but everyone got like good money. Because it's, I mean, everyone is contributing to the show.
Absolutely.
So why not?
And everybody brings something to the table.
Exactly.
You show something. Like even like if you youth B, if you're the most innovative stuff, if you ask me for the future, I would recommend watch a Japanese youth B competition. To have some of these kids. I mean, it's not feasible, but you would see stuff that.
Really, I mean, watching the Japan Cup, you see a lot of strong, good climbers. It's really, and young ones, like even like 16-year-olds. It's really worth watching. And I always watch it with the sound on, like listening to the Japanese commentators. It's super nice. I love it. I don't understand a word, but it's
absolutely.
Udo, again, thanks so much, and I would love to have you again. Like
we should continue for sure.
Yeah, we should continue doing this once in a while, right?
Yeah. Maybe we can if the Olympics happen, so we can do a debrief or whatever. Yeah, I think we have enough stuff.
That would be perfect, I think.
Yeah.
Actually, I have one more question, Udo. How big is your video archive?
Big. And also, this is the only part in my life where I'm really organized. That's the most surprising stuff. Like if you ask me, for example, Chris Sharma, like for his releasing the leg or so, I would find footage of that. And especially since I'm using Final Cut 10, like X, that makes tagging videos really easy. Like you make a bracket over a video and tag it with a certain, like say Chris Sharma or whatever. And then this tag burns itself in the video. So if you want to look for it 10 years after, you have a software and I would be able to retrieve this. Okay. So I have,
a lot. That must be huge. I don't know. Like.
Yeah. No, it's actually, and it's super interesting. Like I even like recently we did a podcast with this American coach and Klaus Iseler. We were talking about injuries, and actually we started to tag like every time a climber holds her shoulder, or seems to be a little uncomfortable or maybe in pain, we tag this with injury ? And very often, like even ACLs, I could basically trace the history of this problem back. You see basically like 1 year a climber has an ACL tear, and I can show you like 1 year before, like how her hip, in what position her hip was, okay, there's something there, and I'm not a physio, so I'm not saying this, but you can do all kinds. And I think, like Shaun White, the snowboarder, didn't have a coach, but a guy who filmed him, and was really smart about what angles to present Shaun, and they would do a debrief of all his trainings. And it's a little surprising that in climbing that's not a thing yet, because the other thing that's sometimes really frustrating, I already mentioned this, you really see some athletes that don't develop.
Actually, the same mistakes.
And nothing, and there's not the things that you see no improvement. And with a video archive, you can really, there's not like just a guess. Like without the videos, I would be guessing, and I'm very often really surprised how little I see in real time or how wrong I was. Like even with climbing, like even former times, I could swear that you climbed this arête from the right side and lay back on the left side, and then I arrived there and just the other way around. I'm like,
But for sure, I mean, video must be one of the most important tools to use, since I mean, you can just look at yourself. How much do you see of yourself when you're climbing? Not so much. But you can see your friends, obviously. So, I mean, remember, I have a question from Leo Tsukov, the photographer. And we already talked about it a little bit, but he was asking, how will competition climbing look in 10 years?
Yeah, I think that you already asked this a little bit.
Yeah, sort of.
And I would think more three-dimensional, more time constraints, like you have to be even faster in any, like especially like from your neurocognition. I think there's still some successful climbers that are not the fastest, to cope with situations. I think we'll see more of this, just how, for example, dual texture holds, how much more they constrain moves, how much easier it is for setters nowadays to really pinpoint certain aspects or certain weaknesses. I think more of this.
Do you think you will see more development in America, in the sense that people will use a lot of different shoes for different problems, that kind of thing, like different rubber, different,
Maybe, hopefully. This is the other thing. In the ideal world, I would not allow. I mean, the shoes are technical. What I love about climbing, and I think many people, is how pure it is compared to many other sports. So I almost hope that wouldn't be one of the developments. It was already in Paris in 2016. That was the first time they had anthems. They were really slippery. And some athletes knew, and some companies developed rubber for this kind of surface. And that would be very unfortunate, at least from my point of view, to have the development in terms of better material, so that we are Formula One. So I hope not.
Yeah.
And I.
Because, for example, you have the dual texture, but you also have like the American climbers like Brooke, for example, like standing in the T-nut in the holes.
Yes, but this is what I meant with a 90s wall. You know, like how is this still a thing? Good for her.
Yeah.
You know, a smart interpretation of the rules. You know, but it's also like rule-wise. You know, you're not allowed to go grab it with your fingers. You know, but you're allowed to stand in it. It's yeah.
But that would be not allowed in Innsbruck anymore.
Is it like that?
Actually, it's not allowed, but they didn't. The ISFC didn't know it, the judges, so they allow it after just for the Salt Lake, but.
It's really difficult to draw the line also because I mean we've all used the holes to push, like get a little bit more push, but it's different from standing, of course.
It's that's what I meant with the wall. You know, if you ask me for the future of climbing, of course the walls have to be a lot different. Like that rectangular angles are still a thing in the climbing comp. You know, that you can, every one of us can hold them like this, you know, and there were plenty of those. Like in the men's semis, you had a really nasty dual texture hold in your right hand that you were going for, but then you could totally grab a sharp, positive edge, you know, to hold the swing. That is no. I think this is one, like when we. Unfortunately, the Munich wall still has holes, but it was designed by Robert Leisner, the guy who runs Mandala in Dresden, and this is a much better thought out wall in terms of what you can do with it and how you can challenge the climbers. You know, there are no sharp transitions and angles on this wall, and this is definitely something that has to happen. I think the walls and also the lead walls, you know, all the same. That is, I mean, they can do a lot with the volume, bring some 3 dimension there, but I still, I'm not so. The walls definitely need, but they're just very expensive, so it's also a little bit has to do with funding.
Again,
so I'm sure that we find something for the next hour.
I'm sure.
Okay.
Udo, again, thank you so much for your time, and
thank you.
Really appreciate it. And next time, Vladek, tank top, okay?
For sure. I will be in Mallorca, so next time.
Mallorca next time, that's right.
Don't look very pale right now. You're the most rested and the most
relaxed.
It was really hot in Salt Lake, so.
I bet. The ball being in the sun in finals.
That's going to be interesting in Tokyo as well, with the either 35 degrees and humid or typhoon.
Yeah.
Next time we'll talk about that.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, guys.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thank you.
Enjoy.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.